The third NBA draft of the Will Dawkins era in DC is officially over, and Will Dawkins told us a lot about how he feels about this Wizards roster going forward. We tap into that next here on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, this is Locked On Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Network, it's your team every day. Alongside DC sports content creating savant and credentialed media member for the Washington Wizards, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober. I cover all things DC sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. And joining us today, a man that probably hasn't slept in days at this point, probably the busiest working member of Wizards media right now, Greg Finberg of Bullets Forever. Man, I just got to ask you right now, have you slept at all in the past couple days?
Maybe like a combined 10 hours. There's just like a lot of news going on, right? And I don't want to miss it. Like Wizards fans don't want to miss it. So just trying to stay on top of that. You can't really sleep when you know that a lot is going on, but it's been good. Obviously I don't mind it because it's been a fun couple of days with Wizards Twitter. Certainly, I think they had a good draft. I think a lot of people, for the most part, think they had another good draft. So I'm excited to join you guys and dive right into it.
It's a good thing. Sorry to cut you off, Ben, but it's a good thing you weren't covering the Brooklyn Nets because I think you actually wouldn't have slept at all, Greg.
Yeah, five picks. That's a lot in the first round. They did other stuff throughout the draft with trades. So those guys are probably way busier than me.
All right, well, let's get right into it. So the Wizards do not take a big in this draft. You see a couple of wing players, and of course, the Wizards' maybe future star in Tre Johnson. Do you think Will Dawkins revealed anything about how he views this Wizards roster going forward in terms of the rebuild in this draft?
In terms of reveal, like if you just kind of tune into the Wizards, then maybe you're just kind of noticing the trend of what Will Dawkins likes. But if you follow the last three drafts of Will Dawkins, you know the exact type of player he covets. A wing that can guard multiple positions, has size to where he won't get picked on the defensive end, can make the three ball at a consistent clip. You saw Trey Johnson, one of the best shooters in this class. Some say maybe even the best movement shooter in the class. Shot 40% from three in a tough SEC conference. Led the SEC in scoring. Jameer Watkins, who they took in the second round, 32% from three. He's a capable three-point shooter. Maybe doesn't jump off the board, but definitely capable of knocking it down. Will Riley, certainly a capable shooter as well. You look at the previous drafts with Sarr being able to stretch the floor, ideally as a four in the league. Bob Carrington, Keyshawn George. So you see a trend of typical Will Dawkins type draft picks. He still has yet to take a guy under 6'5". And so he continues to stack the same, type of players. And I think you mentioned, in terms of the plethora of wings, and I'm sure we'll dive into the fact that the Wizards are a little bit thin in the front court later in the episode. But in terms of revealing, if you've been on Will Dawkins and you kind of know the type of archetype and player he likes, the three guys he took in this class perfectly, represent that. So I don't know if it revealed anything for me, someone that's watched the last three drafts, but maybe if you're new to it, you're kind of getting a glimpse of what Dawkins likes.
Yeah, I think one thing for sure, the fact that you landed Tre Johnson at 6 to me, Greg, is amazing, especially since you didn't have the most luck in this past lottery. Would you consider a steal for Johnson falling in Will Dawkins' lap at 6, or do you think? Because I saw mock drafts where he was supposed to go 3 to Philly. To me, like I got some slack on X or even I think on the YouTube channel where someone said it's not really a steal, it's more of just like he was projected to go there.
If you were looking at the odds, like Tre Johnson for a lot of the pre-draft process was around the 3 or 4 mark, and then towards the draft he was dropping to 6, 7, 8. So it did fluctuate. But again, it just matters how you view the draft. Like I think it's a steal because I had Tre Johnson at number 3 on my board. The Wizards stayed at 6 and took him. If you had Tre Johnson at 6 or 7, then yes, obviously you're not going to view it as a steal. But consensus, I think, kind of mocked him in the top 5 for a better part of the pre-draft process. Certainly heard he had really good workouts, obviously led his team to the tournament, averaged great numbers in a tough conference. So to me, he is a steal. Getting him at 6 when I thought he should have gone at 3 is certainly in that realm. So again, I think it's also a steal in terms of the fact that they didn't have to give up assets to get a guy of his caliber. Obviously the lottery didn't go the way that the Wizards wanted, But to get, the type of scorer, the type of shooter and offensive creator that Johnson is by staying put at 6, I think it's a steal. And it depends on your board. But for me, having him at 3, falling to 6, that's good value for me.
So with the Wizards taking 2 wing type players in this draft, and Will Riley and Jameer Watkins, guys that can get it done, especially offensively, a lot of upside offensively, and Will Riley, and then Jameer Watkins, who has proven himself as a pretty able defender at the college level, and expect that to translate to the NBA. Does this maybe give the proponent here that Bilal Coulibaly is not someone the front office is completely sold on yet, because they will have to make a decision on him come after this regular season?
I wouldn't say so. Again, like I mentioned with Dawkins and his philosophy, he's just looking to add talent. He's a big proponent of these wings, like I mentioned. In the modern NBA, I don't know if you can really have enough wings. It's becoming pretty positionless, as you saw with OKC. They play pretty positionless basketball. Same goes for Indiana, and they met in the finals. So I think it's just a matter of acquiring talent. And so, obviously Bilal was traded up for by Dawkins, and they knew it would be a long way to go. Certainly shooting 34% from 3 in your rookie year and then regressing to 28% from 3 isn't great. Obviously, his last 2 seasons have ended with injuries, so not any record-breaking crazy stuff from Bilal. But he also, had a triple-double last year against Brooklyn, when he was given the opportunity with the ball in his hands. He had breakout games of 20-plus points. He's a freak athlete with some of the plays with dunks and blocks, with his head at the rim. So, he's still 20. He's a guy that I think they view, as a high upside player, only entering year 3. I certainly think he does need to show some semblance of improvement from 3, especially because his biggest asset is that quick first step, is that athleticism. And in order to take guys off the dribble and get by them, you can't have them defending you in the paint when you're on the 3-point line. So I think Bilal needs to add a jumper. He needs to really get consistent from there, make guys respect him, which helps the spacing, for him and the team. But in terms of the draft, just because they took 2 wings, I don't necessarily think that means too much for Bilal's future. I think it'll definitely be a part of the core.
I wanted to talk about trading back from pick 18 to 21 when Danny Wolf was on the board, essentially passing up on him. Do you think it's because a lot of Wizards fans are concerned right now with the front court position being very, very thin when it comes to depth? Is it similar to a situation where your Will Dawkins just want a lot of talent and not more of what the team needs? Or do you think it's just, hey, maybe we'll figure out our big and maybe Alex Carr can step up year 2?
I mean, I can answer this question, or I can just read a Will Dawkins quote that he said today, and I think that'll probably answer it for you because he was talking to Kevin Sheehan today on radio, and he said, "quote The main focus is always going to be to put the organization in a position for our long-term success. The decisions we made are less about position and more about getting the type of guys we want in here stylistically, and also giving them the runway to develop." End quote. I mean, he's pretty clearly saying, we're looking to bring in talent, point blank, period. I'm sure wherever they picked, they said, you know what, this guy's the best player on our board. We're going to take him right here. If that guy was a center, then I'm sure they wouldn't have minded taking a center. But at the end of the day, like I've seen all the people on Twitter, and if you didn't like the Wizards draft, you didn't like it probably for that reason, considering they're pretty thin in the front court and they didn't necessarily address that in the draft. But if you're looking to reach on a center just so that the Wizards can maybe compete for a play-in game in 2026, like I don't know what you're even thinking. Like again, this is a team that's probably going to bottom out again next year. So reaching on a guy to fill a front court need just so you can maybe be a little bit better in a season, you're not really trying to be better wins wise. That doesn't make sense. You get talent where you can get talent in the draft. They clearly wanted Jameer Watkins. He fell into their lap at 43. And so they took him. If they were going to reach on a guy like Vlad Golden, who's a center that would fill a need at 43, it wouldn't be good value. I'm pretty sure he went undrafted. So clearly they're in the talent acquiring mode and kind of, they have a bunch of wings and guards. They're going to see who sticks. They're going to see maybe who doesn't. And then I'm sure in the offseason, like they have Olynyk, they have Sar. We'll see what they do with Tristan Vukcevic, but they have cap space. Like they're not like hard capped. They can go out and sign a center. They did it last offseason with Valanciunas on a really good deal, then got 2 seconds for him at the deadline after he gave you some good minutes. They could always bring back Rashawn Holmes, who provided good playing time, 7 points, 5 rebounds in 31 games he played off the bench last year. So there's certainly options in the market, some other centers. And I think that's a way better way to address that, especially for next year, maybe on a short-term deal. Um, than reaching in the draft on somebody that you think fits, when you just need talent at every position.
Yeah, you segued it perfectly because I was going to ask you what the Wizards might do here offseason wise in terms of addressing the front court. Would you rather just roll the punches right here with what you got in Rashawn Holmes, Olynyk, and of course, trying to develop Sarr here, or would you go and get a veteran and put alongside Sarr at this point?
So I think ideally, the Washington probably views Sarr as more of a four, probably same for Vukcevic in terms of the fact that, like, I don't think they can ever body down low with some of the bigger bruising centers. I think it would really help them to have somebody else in the front court to take over that responsibility. And so I think what you saw with the draft philosophy is they're pretty confident in Sarr. They're pretty confident. I mean, they're going to keep Olynyk. Like, I don't think he's going to get dealt at another time, maybe at the deadline. But he's solid backup power forward slash center, and that's kind of what you got right now. You're gonna, I would assume they're gonna bring back Vukcevic. I don't know if it's gonna be on a two-way deal or on a standard NBA deal, but I think he could probably be a guy that also gives you some depth in the front court. You got Rashawn Holmes, who has only 250,000 of his $12.8 million contract guaranteed for next season. It was the same boat the Wizards were in last year with Holmes, and they just renegotiated it to a 2-year, $25 million deal. And again, now we're at that point where they don't have to guarantee it. I believe it's the 29th of June, that they have to guarantee it by. So if they let him walk, they have another need and hole there. If they bring him back, then that kind of addresses your issue. You got four players right there in your front court, and you're not going to be great down low. You're going to get killed on the glass probably, and you're still going to need some more depth there. But those are four guys that you can be decently confident in moving forward, at least for this year, especially when wins aren't the sole goal. It's realistically development. And there's going to be centers on the open market. I mean, the Valanciunas signing kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I certainly didn't see it coming. Not a lot of people saw it coming. And it turned out to be a pretty good signing. They got value for him at the deadline. So I think going with that approach again is something that I think is a better way of addressing that need, I guess, versus reaching in the draft.
Yeah,
All right,
and go ahead, Ben.
go ahead, Abdullah.
No, I completely agree with Greg here. And one thing that I want to talk about, which will be our next segment, was the whole Ace Bailey situation. I've heard a lot of people talk about how it was somewhat of a blessing that he went before Washington could pick, because a lot of the news coming out after the draft is just he's already having a shaky relationship with Utah when he hasn't even played a summer league game yet. So I can't wait to talk about that.
Well, we've seen that Ace Bailey has already gotten his name is still circulating here post-draft. We're going to discuss if the Wizards dodged a bullet here with Bailey going just before them. That's next on Locked On Wizards. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, whether it's the fit, comfort, or finding the right style for me. Skims changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims Stretch 5 boxer brief, and I'm hooked. These are perfect for my active lifestyle. They move with me. They never lose their shape. They stay in place all day. Whether I'm working out or just running errands, they are the most comfortable and reliable underwear I have ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing. It's almost like you're wearing absolutely nothing. Welcome back here on Locked On Wizards, joined by our friend Greg Finberg of Bullets Forever. And we're discussing Ace Bailey because his name has not left the circulation of rumors. Brian Windhurst actually reported a couple of hours ago that Ace Bailey has had minimal contact with the Utah Jazz since being drafted and hasn't yet arrived in Utah. Did the Wizards dodge a bullet by not drafting him because he went the pick before at number 5?
I mean, dodgeable. Like, I think the upside is definitely there, and I think it'd be a lot different in Washington versus Utah in terms of, there were multiple reports that indicated that he wanted to go to Washington. That's kind of what he had circled on his list of preferred destinations at number 6. So again, like, the fact that there's all the drama with him not reporting to Utah, even though Walter Clayton Jr. did. Like, I don't think that would have happened in Washington. I think he would have been pretty ecstatic to come to the situation, obviously as one of his preferred destinations. So I think all that drama aside, It would be different considering he wanted to be in Washington versus what seems like a guy that doesn't want to be in Utah. He also apparently told Utah that he didn't want to be there, and they drafted him anyway. So Utah knew, what they were getting themselves into. So certainly going to be interesting to follow. But if you're the Wizards, it's a pretty stark contrast between how it's gone with Tre Johnson versus what you're seeing with Bailey. Tre Johnson's a guy that said all he likes to do is play basketball. Like he reads, I think, listens to music, hangs out with friends, and plays basketball. So like he kind of projects as a guy that's just gonna be in the gym and really cares about his craft. And you see it nowadays with a lot of guys that get to the league and the money's all guaranteed. Like I'm pretty sure Dylan Harper is making like 46 million, and that's like double what his dad made his entire NBA career. So and that's all guaranteed. And so you see guys get into the league, they make all that money, and they don't have that drive to be better. And I don't really fear for that with a guy like Tre Johnson. Versus if I'm a Jazz fan, Ace Bailey hasn't even, received his Utah Jazz jersey, and he is already, I guess, creating a little bit of an issue. And so I obviously think if you're the Wizards, you're pretty happy with how it unfolded. I think the Wizards would have been happy with Bailey too, because I don't think he would be pulling any of the stunts he's been pulling, I guess, now reportedly, if he went to the place that he wanted to. But Utah knew what they were getting themselves into. So I think they'll handle it the way that I guess they foresaw it unfolding.
I think one thing for sure, the whole narrative of Bailey talking about how he wanted to be the main guy, taking all those shots, and that's something that was somewhat of a flaw going into this draft process of what he did at Rutgers. I was thinking about the fact that if he did do that, if Washington ended up picking him, do you think that would have stunted the development of guys like Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George? Or am I just thinking too much about that situation?
I mean, possibly like Ace Bailey's a pretty ball dominant guy in terms of like when he gets the ball, he's probably gonna put it up. And Tre Johnson, I guess, is a little bit similar in terms of he is a scorer. He has a scoring mentality, but he's also a good like movement shooter. He's a good player off the ball as well. Can get himself open with the ball, without the ball, and that's why I put him in a spot over Bailey. That's why I had him at number 3 on my board. Because Ace Bailey would get the ball, and you would just say, okay, he's just going to try to find his shot. Whereas Tre Johnson would try to find a shot, but at times made the right read and made the right play. Better shooter, better offensive player, in my opinion, at the time, better prospect. So again, I don't know if it would have hurt the development, but I certainly think the Wizards got the better player, and maybe Ace has higher upside than Johnson. But right now, I don't know if you can really argue the fact that Tre Johnson's a more complete player and more complete prospect entering the league than Bailey.
Real quick final message here from Skims. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select Locked On Wizards Show in the drop-down menu that follows. Real quick, while we still got you, Greg, Ace Bailey, if he were on the board there and Tre Johnson were also there, do you think the Wizards at this point actually would have been higher on Tre Johnson because of the stuff you've alluded to with him in the pre-draft process, or do you think they would have gone for upside there in Bailey?
I guess you'll never know, because I'm sure if you ask the Wizards and Will Dawkins, they'll say that they were going to take Tre Johnson all along. I mean, there were certainly rumors that the Wizards flew out to Atlanta. I saw that and they were the only team that worked out Ace Bailey. But ESPN also said that Bailey didn't do any workouts at all. So conflicting reports, but it certainly seems the Wizards were interested. By all accounts, I saw that the Wizards were really high on Bailey, and if he were there, probably would have selected him. But again, if it were me and I was in that seat and I had the choice between them, I would have taken Tre Johnson. So again, it worked out the way that I hoped it would work out, with Johnson falling there. But if you add Bailey there as well and Johnson there, based on everything that I read, I guess I think the Wizards would have leaned Bailey. So time will tell if him going a pick before them was a blessing in disguise, or if the Wizards barely missed out on a generational talent.
I saw your post about how the summer league schedule for the Washington. I think the number one game I think a lot of Wizards fans are excited for is that Ace Bailey versus Tre Johnson matchup. Just how exciting, and just in general, the summer league team as a whole. Because do we know as of right now if all of the guys in Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington, Alex Sarr, alongside the guys they picked up in this draft, will play, or do you think a guy like Bub Carrington and Alex Sarr might not play just because of injury concern?
I think Dawkins said last night that like typically, he'd expect all of the second year guys to play, and obviously all the rookies are going to play. I highly doubt Bilal plays. I highly doubt Tristan Vukcevic plays. But I would guess that all the rookies play. So you'll see Watkins, you'll see Johnson, and you'll see Will Riley. I'm sure you'll see the undrafted free agent they just signed in Kadari Richmond out of St. John. So that's kind of four locks there. And then in terms of second year guys, I think Bub, Keyshawn, and AJ Johnson will be there. Alex Sarr is on the preliminary roster for Eurobasket for France. That's an 18-man roster. And I think there will be a couple cuts, and I don't know if that starts until after Summer League, but it's possible that Sarr decides to go with that over Summer League. So that's the one that I could see maybe not playing with this group. But other than that, there's other seven guys. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't play.
All right. Special thanks to our good friend here, Greg Finberg of Bullets Forever. Be sure to check him out on Twitter at Greg Finberg for all your latest Wizards news and updates. When we come back here on Locked On Wizards, Abdul and I are going to grade the previous draft year, the third draft in the Will Dawkins era for the Washington Wizards. We'll be right back. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals. Clear seat views and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for exciting upcoming MLB games. Game Time has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA World Cup matchups. Seat views are right in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you'll be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Shout out to our guy, Greg Finberg, who joined us on the show today. He is a treat as always, delivering us the top Wizards insight in the business. Finally, Abdullah and I here, final segment of Locked On Wizards of the Week. Let's go ahead and grade the performance of Washington's front office here in the NBA draft. We'll start with you, my friend.
Yeah, so I will say for sure, Will Dawkins, another draft that I think aligns well with last year's draft and his first draft as a GM of the Washington Wizards, getting a guy who fits the culture here in Washington, a guy who is an A+ off the court as much as he is on the court. But I think one thing for sure is the whole front court situation. I thought they would have addressed it, but again, I think Will Dawkins is addressing more talent than need at this point, and I think he thinks for sure that he can get another big man come free agency or maybe even next year when we'll just have a lot of cap space. So for now, because Trey Johnson was a home run pick for me, that's amazing. You can get him at 6. I think Will Riley is going to be really, really good as well. Jameer Watkins is an interesting prospect. I'd say B+, almost towards an A-, just because, again, the Tre Johnson pick, especially when you lose a guy in Jordan Poole, who is your leading scorer, a guy that can create a shot for himself, but then you substitute in Tre Johnson, a guy who is a potential superstar when it comes to being able to score the ball at will. I can't wait to see what he does as a Wizard.
I'd agree with you. I was leaning B+ as well, and I think it's really hard to give it anything less than a B at minimum when you get Tre Johnson with the 6th overall pick. As Greg had detailed, Tre Johnson was a guy that was 3rd in his big board, and you knew you were going to have the option after Knipple went at number 4. You were either getting Bailey or Johnson in this draft. So I think when you get a guy with superstar potential like the Wizards did in Tre Johnson, it's tough to overlook that no matter what else they do in the draft. The fact that the Wizards had a second first-round pick is always something that's quite a novelty, and the Wizards were able to use that and get a player with super strong upside in Will Riley. I know his head coach at Illinois, Brad Underwood, spoke to the media, spoke to DC media here at the Fan a couple of times yesterday, and he really detailed what was so great to him about Will Riley. And he said there wasn't even any reason particularly why he wasn't in the starting lineup for a lot of the year at Illinois. He says he doesn't really start or bench players based on how good he thinks they are. He'll have his guys get his minutes based on what they earn. He said Riley was a guy that took 70,000 3-pointers a week. After games would be over, he'd be in the gym for hours working on his 3-point game. And I think that's something that really means a lot to this Wizards organization because they've been so keen in on guys that absolutely just love basketball. Tre Johnson, one thing he had mentioned throughout his interviews after the draft was that this is a dream come true because his whole life is about basketball. Everything has been about basketball. That's the main thing. And the Wizards get exactly what they want out of those players right there. You get Jameer Watkins as well, who is a plus defender from what we saw at his years at Florida State and then VCU. And I think he also has pretty good upside given his length.
I saw Ben 6'5" with the 6'11" wingspan. That is
Yeah.
insane.
The length is ridiculous, and I saw some clips of him applying the full court pressure at Florida State, and man, he is good at picking guys' pockets as they try to go by him. He's got that athletic reach that allows him to get to the rim well and rock it. I really think they hit this draft out of the park because they got so much more talent on this roster, and I'm okay with the fact that they didn't get somebody to pair alongside Alex Sarr. If Will Dawkins, Travis Schlenk, Michael Winger didn't find somebody in this draft that was worth taking at that point where they didn't think they were reaching, I'm okay with them going best player available and getting talent because the Wizards need to get more talented overall. That was the main thing with this draft. That was the main thing that Greg brought up with us today is that the Wizards needed talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And I know we've put so much emphasis on defense with this regime. There's so much emphasis on defense in the NBA, but you got to score the basketball to win games. And I think they chose a ton of guys that can become prolific scorers in the NBA for years to come. That's why I got to give this draft at least a B+ right now.
Yeah, and I think the way the office in general just managed the draft, especially after a day, you traded away Jordan Poole, your best player of last year, undisputedly. It's impressive, and Will Dawkins is definitely going to have to answer a lot of questions when the new year starts of why'd you trade Jordan Poole, the package you got in return, the lack of picking a big man in round 2 or round 1. Is that a concern going into this year 3 of this rebuild? And I can't wait. This is exciting. And again, Greg mentioned it early on in the episode. This upcoming year, it's going to be more focused on development rather than wins. Because let's be real, the Wizards are not going to be wanting to win. There's not much of an incentive to win because you want to get that top 8 pick to protect your draft pick. Because if it falls out of the top 8, we'll keep talking about it. It goes to New York, and that's from that John Wall trade, which to me is insane. But this was an exciting draft. I think one thing for sure, Ben, is that we're not going to be talking about any more of potentially getting Ace Bailey or Tre Johnson. It's just we have our guys, and now let's get ready to work.
Couldn't have said it any better, my friend. Well, that'll do it for us here on Locked On Wizards for this week. Big week for us, and we really thank everyone who tuned in with us for all the episodes, for the live stream we did for the NBA draft. It's been so much fun interacting with you guys, and continue to do so in the comments. Let us know how you are feeling about the Wizards post-2025 NBA draft. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no off-season. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be most informed about as an NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We sign off for my co-host, Abdullah Ayubi. I'm Ben Strober, Wizards Nation. We'll talk to you next week. Let's go, Wizards.